This morning, we're also learning more about President Biden's decision to end the war in Afghanistan. The New York Times reporting that he went against his own general's advice to keep some troops in the region. This as Secretary of State Tony Blinken defended the decision after returning from Kabul.
We went to Afghanistan 20 years ago, and we went because we were attacked on 9/11. We achieved the objectives that we set out to achieve.
I'm very honored to bring in our next guest, someone who was deeply involved in this war, retired Army William McRaven. He led the Navy SEAL raid on Osama bin Laden, in Pakistan. And he is the author of the new book, The Hero Code, Lessons Learned from Lives Well Lived. Admiral, thank you so much for being here. I want to talk about a lot of things, but I want to start with this pushback we are hearing from people on both sides of the aisle about the president's decision. You were there. Is Biden making the right call?
Well, obviously the Biden administration came to the assessment that we weren't going to have a military solution to the problem in Afghanistan. And I will tell you, as a former, senior officer, all you really want to make sure is that you have an opportunity to talk to the commander-in-chief, to voice your concerns. And I know for a fact that General Scott Miller, the ISAF commander, General Frank McKenzie, who is the Central Command commander, General Mark Milley, the chairman, and of course Secretary Lloyd Austin, all of whom have extensive experience in Afghanistan, they all had an opportunity to sit down with the president and voice their concerns and lay out the risks. Then at the end of the day, it's up to the civilian leadership to make the decision. So now our responsibility as a professional military is to try to mitigate the risks and do as the commander-in-chief asks.
Well, people argue that President Obama pulling troops from Iraq led to the rise of ISIS. How valid do you think the concerns are that the same thing could happen now with al-Qaeda? Can we fight extremism if we're not there?
Well, obviously, ISIS is a little different than either the Taliban or al-Qaeda. But, we've learned some lessons from the time in Iraq and as Iraq began to unfold when ISIS grew. But here's what I'll tell you. Again, we understand the risks. There are the risks of a resurgent Taliban. There are the risks of, all the progress that the women have made in Afghanistan, and will that be drawn back? There is, of course, always the risk of al-Qaeda creating a sanctuary again in Afghanistan. And from a counterterrorism standpoint, I will tell you, I think we can mitigate that particular risk, and we can do so from over the horizon. We have the technology today to be able to keep drones in the air. As long as we can maintain a reasonably good intelligence network on the ground, we'll be able to kind of keep al-Qaeda at bay. And of course, that is the whole reason we went into Afghanistan in the first place.
You mentioned women. How concerned are you going forward then about the safety of Afghan women?
Yeah, I mean, it is absolutely a concern. Now, I listened to the president of Afghanistan yesterday, and he understands all the remarkable gains that women have made. I mean, women in Afghanistan now make up about 40% of the student bodies, across all levels of education. They're in the military, they're in the police, they're in politics. So they've made tremendous gains. I think this is something that the Afghan people are going to have to fight for. They are going to have to hold the ground when it comes to all the progress that women have made, because that is a real concern. And I really hope and pray for the Afghan people that they'll be able to keep those gains in place.
I realize hindsight is 20/20, and this is far more complicated than someone like me could understand. But the United States did spend $1 trillion. We lost 2,300 troops in Afghanistan, and that's not even mentioning the countless Afghan civilian lives. And al-Qaeda and the Taliban are still there. Was all of this worth it?
Yeah, well, here's what I'll tell you. When I think back on the 20 years, we have not had another al-Qaeda attack in the U.S. We have trained 350,000 Afghan national security forces, which hopefully will be able to keep the Taliban and al-Qaeda at bay. Again, we've had great progress in women's rights in Afghanistan. But here's something that your listeners ought to pay particular attention to. Nothing about the outcome of this war will diminish the sacrifice of the soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, the intelligence professionals, the foreign service officers. None of that, none of their sacrifice, none of their patriotism, none of their heroism, none of that will be diminished by the outcome of this war.
I want to talk about that heroism, the patriotism, because your book is exactly that. It is a tribute to military heroes that you have met over the years. You, of course, are a military hero as well. But now that we are seeing so many come home from Afghanistan, what should we know about them?
Well, of course, the book is more than just about the military people I've met. It's about these kind of remarkable heroes that I had a chance to encounter in both my 37 years in the military and also my time as the chancellor of the University of Texas. And what you find about heroes is, we can all become heroes. We can learn these noble qualities. We can learn to be courageous. We can learn to be more humble. We can learn to persevere. And so the stories in the book are about these remarkable men and women I've had a chance to meet in my life and the qualities, these noble qualities that they had that made them heroes. And I think, today we need heroes more than ever before. Every nation needs heroes. It inspires the younger generation, frankly, to be better than the current generation and to move the country forward. So I certainly hope that the readers will enjoy the book and really see the value of these great heroes that I've had a chance to meet in my lifetime.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.